As for perhaps an effective beginner's practice is get your magic towel, i.e. beach towel, put it on the ground. That's your 1 meter monastery. Put yourself in the lion's position. Or just get yourself on the ground so that you feel gravity. Then put the focus on the breath. And as one thought arises after the next, especially if there's some type of annoying thought or it's, again, greed, ill will, or delusion. Let's get back to ill will, aversion of any kind. Then you can shift from the lion's position to a stress position. And then you can hold that stress position depending on how strong the aversion is. You can hold it for however long you feel is necessary, and then you can release it, go back down to the lion's position or return to the lion's position. Focus on the breath. It comes back, you go back into a stress position. And you can vary the stress position, such as lifting your legs maybe 2 centimeters off the ground, holding it there, letting it go back down, or doing it repetitively. Hold it for about 3 seconds, let it go down, then lift up your arms. Hold your arms for, if you're completely spread out, lift your arms up a couple of inches, right? And you can go back and forth like that. Especially if you go through storms of aversion, which is how I like to describe it sometimes. And then you can just also shift to, let's say, light yogic exercises, even if thoughts of any kinds of aversionary thoughts, or how about thoughts of doubt, any kind of hindering thoughts, wanting to know. Whenever you ask yourself why, or why this, why that, essentially what you don't have in those moments is faith. If you had faith in karma, if you have faith in fate, if you have faith in fatalism, then you wouldn't be asking why. Things happen because because this, because that, because perhaps past lives, right? It's beyond your comprehension. But faith is within your grasp. So if you're asking why, okay, you don't have faith. So you can say the word faith. You can say the word karma. And then you can also say boo, do. That's a response. The Buddha, right? The Buddhist method is the answer. The answer is seeing these things arise, these states, these desires, like the desire to wanting to know, the desire for something else, and watching it cease. And that is how you go from a troubled mind to a neutral mind, a big mind, an empty mind. We do not have the answers. There are no answers. There is life force, vital life force. And there is the practice of moving from agitation, disappointment, anger, bouts of anger. I like that one, bouts of anger. It's just like rain. There's bouts of rain on some days, like there will be clouds and then there will rain. There's clouds that will rain on you and then they blow away real quick. Don't think of it as just gray days on end of gray, although that is a weather pattern too. But think of it more in a dynamic. If you've ever been to New Mexico or deserts, the clouds roll in real quick and they'll rain real hard and then they'll blow out real quick too. Think of it more like that. And those mind moments come fast and furious. You just weather them with your practice, knowing that they will go. But you have to weather them because there's no other way of doing it. It's what is happening now. But it will pass with the method. And yeah, being on the ground, you're connected to the earth element, and feeling that gravity, that is your reminder that you're in this process, that you're in a higher state of awareness. Let it be used to tell your inner mind, look, I'm in the practice. I have a little bit of advantage because that's giving me the signal. It's giving the signal to your inner self that you're more aware. You're putting in more right effort than is normally the case, and that's going to be to your advantage because it's a signal to the inner mind, but it's also a real signal. Yes, you are connected with the earth now. You're not doing anything else. So you're in an advantage. That is a clear sign to everyone, every mind, right? The three states of mind, that you have right effort. You're in this thing. You're in the game of sorting out, the game of repair, the game of awareness. Awareness is very key because just look at these people jogging around. These people caught in circuitous, habitual, and external activities. Look at these people running away from things. You're not doing that. You're facing it. Right? That connection with the earth element is, you're facing it. They think you're doing nothing. That's not true. You're doing internal work. So we don't check out, we check in. We check in with ourselves, and we do it regularly. We do it on a repetitive basis because that's what it takes, and it's also enjoyable to win these things. It's just like you're sitting down and you were attacked by flies, but now you're sitting down and you're going to swat the big ones that would otherwise land and just have a feast. Biting flies, right, that just land and bite you. If you're not in a position to be aware of them and to shoo them off, you're going to get bitten and stung. But now you're saying, all right, look, they had a little feast for a time, but now I'm putting myself in a advantageous position and they're not going to bite me. And if they do, it's going to be real quick reaction and they're going to fly off. And you should find some satisfaction in it. That's the satisfaction of the practice. And you get better at it. And less of them, less flies come in the more you do it. In fact, the goal is that when you're not in practice, there's no biting flies in your mind. Or if they do come in, you're able to see them or automatically drop them without having to go into the manual practice because you've trained your mechanism to do it. Some of them are very subtle, like they can crawl on the ground. But once you see it, oh, okay, this is a new vector, then you can be aware of it. You can be automatically aware of it. And so again, for beginners, get your magic carpet in your 1 meter monastery, get in the lion's position and push back. I like to think of it as when you create these stress positions that you're really pushing back. You're really taking a psychophysical response to these psychological things, that you're really taking action. It's not just mental, it's physical. It's a combination of the two. And the other good advantages is if you do this, like for example, like I would say you could limit sessions perhaps to just get yourself started. Do it for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, or do it before you go to bed. You might shift to sleeping on the floor. Now, the floor doesn't have to be super hard. You could put maybe a foam mat under it, but it shouldn't be overly comfortable either. But I think the harder the floor, the more direct the connection to the earth element, the higher the awareness. Right? You know, hey, look, I fell asleep, but I woke up and now I know I'm on the floor. Why? Because it's hard. It's hard floor. It's not a soft floor. So that right there is sort of a mini austerity that more or less anyone can withstand. And then you can shift directly to the breath meditation. And again, if some thought comes up, the first thoughts that hit a lot of people in the morning, those are the ones that you can push back on with the body weight technique. So you're aware of them. You're also aware of the practice. And you initiate the practice with your first waking moments. And you were in the practice directly before you went to sleep, because otherwise you wouldn't be on the floor. So that is a strong practice. It's a subtle practice, even if you think it isn't. It's having an effect. If you go back to it, if you do it every night, then you're going to get good results. And it's going to be subtle. It's not that direct. I have to be sitting in a position all day type thing, but it's something that can get beginners into the practice, that they can then segue to a more formal practice on top of that practice. Another variation is you might go to bed as usual in your bed, but you have your magic carpet ready to go, perhaps something that you use as a pillow, maybe a second one that you have rolled up. And then if a dark hour comes, because this is oftentimes how it works, is that at 3 in the morning, either you have to get up to go to the bathroom, and then you can't go back to sleep, or your mind starts engaging in its nocturnal activities. Then you can just switch to the lion's position on the floor and start going through the exercises that way. And if you go to sleep on the floor and you wake up on the floor, then that is, again, good practice. Because at least your body-mind signal was that you are devoted to the practice. People that do that spend hours in a form of practice, even if people would say it's sort of a beginner kind of light practice or a subtle practice, it's still a practice. So while other people were sleeping, essentially doing nothing, you were sleeping plus being in practice. And that adds up. That's one day where you wake up with the right awareness. Like, all right, look. And then when you wake up on the floor, you're already in the practice. So you're in a better position. So use that position to drop whatever it is that's bothering you and pick up the practice instead. I mentioned in a previous episode that in times of hybrid war and Bolshevik-inspired radical class operatives, that women are very oftentimes used for subversive activities, such as Bodinskying their way into institutions, especially religious ones, to preside over them. Well, there's an equivalent. There's the radical class male operative as well. Now, he's either a weakling, i.e., technically a male, but a weakling mentally and culturally, or he's a subversive element, which means he does not have his sexuality under control. He's a fluid kind of being. So just imagine like a tomato that's been smashed with a hammer. That's sort of the characteristic or character that these men have. So they should not even be let into any type of religious institution. What they do need is perhaps a mental institution, or maybe some training camp, or maybe they can just conduct individual practice. But as far as institutions go, they're just a plague and a poison and a mold. Just like they're sort of manly, aggressive female equivalent, they're the other side of that coin. And yeah, it's a shame. In the past, they probably could have been overlooked to a certain extent until they messed up and were thrown out. But these days, they've been created in torpedo factories sociologically. And so they're a class. They're part of the radical class, the subversive class. They're demographically significant in numbers. And so they should just be excluded on the basis of that. And for that, you could just put in a series or batteries of tests. Now, each abbot would have to be advised and be skilled. Perhaps even have like a holding tank for new members and see how they do. And it's very unfortunate that this has been done to Western culture. It's very regrettable. But if you think of it in terms of warlike measures, this is what's been done. So if you think, for example, what Chinese armies used to do to peasant boys, like chopping off their feet and things like that, it's a similar barbaric practice that nobody really seems to have a grip on at this moment. It's just considered to be normal. Oh, this is normal. This is what educated, in tune with it, radical leftist kind of people show for. So very unfortunate, and also a lot of them they didn't deserve it. They're just victims, but at the same time, just like these manly, off-putting women and anyone in the radical class, they're victimizing victims. So they used their position to victimize others and to corrode and break down and subvert institutions. So should you feel sorry for them? Should you help them out? Well, a lot of good people thought that was the right thing to do, and that wasn't the right thing to do. The only thing you can do is exclude them, but also identify them early and not let them get any foothold in any nook and cranny anywhere, in anything that should work for more deserving people of the future and of the present, and not a radical class of subversives. Or their handlers, their instructors, their creators, their explainers. And that you need to go up into the academic chain and see people that are accredited talking about these things as if they're modern. They are, of course, the worst of all, and their karma, it's a hell realm level. So watch them. They think they're pretty polished. They think they're pretty hip and cool. But they're about as old as a bag of guts that has been out in the sun for 3 or more days. They stink about as nice as that too. But again, no matter what I say, some people might get offended at that you would be looking at the radical class or people that have been subverted by them. They act that way. But a lot of these institutions that have been infiltrated and subverted by them, they're not coming back, they're just going away. Or what they're doing is just the pretense of Buddhism. They're binos, Buddhist in name only. They're another sociological trap set up by essentially Bolsheviks. I imagine that's what they do in China, just in a different way. See, they don't have to be covert, they're overt. Places where they haven't taken over complete control yet or declared it overtly, they do it covertly. So there they, of course, don't have any practice to speak of. They just are binos. And it's probably even dangerous being around people like that because they don't like people that are authentic. In fact, they really hate authentic people and are very worried about them and figure out ways to undermine them. So this is just one of the many conditions during Cold Harbor War that can be considered cultural war crimes of the highest nature, not just in worldly life, but of course thinking of the lives to come. Hell realms are where they are going. But I hope as many institutions as possible can see them for what they are and take active and passive measures to prevent that from happening, from institutions from collapsing. But if not, that's just the way it's going to be, and that does not, never will negate individual practices, which is what the Buddha essentially was always for. It's great when you have institutions, it's great when you have universities, it's great when you have abbots that are skillful and wise, but in the 5 sense realm, that's rather an anomaly, isn't it? And during hybrid war, it's not common, is it? So be aware of these, whatever they call themselves, temples, monasteries, nunneries, if they have these people in them. And you do have to look a couple of times to see them. And again, they might just go through the motions. to appear authentic, but they aren't that, are they? So yeah, women trying to get in and Budinsky their way to the top is an easy one to see, but these, like I said, the little smashed weaklings are ones you have to be aware of, because it's a comedy routine. They play the straight man, right, to the bozo, but they're both working in tandem. That's hard for people to see. They would think, well, this is too conspiratorial, this is too paranoid, but it's just happened over and over and over and over again in different institutes. It's common at this point to see it happening. So I'm not saying it's happening anywhere specifically, but it's happened in a lot of places, and that's how they did it. So how are these things done? How do they go from teaching pure Dhamma to inverted morality? That's how it happens. That's how it happened. And I don't specifically point out the Buddhist monasteries, but the Christians certainly have a very, very shameful recent history of this happening to them. Because, of course, that was the primary religious institution in the West up until now. So, of course, it got the most attention by hybrid war actors, and that's how they did it. And they're out loud now. They think they've shifted normalcy via Overton to their version, and they don't plan on it ever going back to the real thing. And young people, well, they don't know what were the bad things in the past. Well, they rewrite history according to memory war parameters. They did it the wrong way, but we do it the right way now, and no questions. Otherwise, you're a terrible person. You're hateful. You're a hater. Wow. Watch The Body Snatchers. That film's really cool. I think they knew what was coming down the pike. They just tried to do it symbolically. Also, so zombie films is that's the message. People playing dress up and pretend, but again, smashed on psychological levels that are irreparable. But very nice to you. If you talk to them, they're very, very nice. Till they're not. Always scheming. Always doing this and that to make sure that they've got the top spots. Or are on the way to getting there. Always politics, always politics. So, but yeah, what can't defeat that? Well, individual practice, that's right. Individual practice has none of those games. And if you have a decentralized practice, well, what do? You block them. You usher them out of any networks you're in, and you keep your eyes open for them going into the future, and keeping your eye open for variations of that technique, because they do adapt where they can, when they can, how they can. But individual practice puts them far behind you. I was thinking again, what is the reason this time? Is this time worse than other times? And I was thinking, I do think hybrid war makes this time worse than previous times. Because one of its features is that it's something that is not declared on an enemy, and so you don't get any closure on these matters. So is it a sociological phenomenon, or is it a bunch of orchestrators. Well, you don't get any closure by the other side. And it's claimed not to be happening. So you're crazy. You're crazy. You see it happening. You're just stuck in the past or something. They come out with different gaslighting techniques on an individual and also on a social level, and it's backed by what people would assume to be establishment actors, but where they get their funding from is also mysterious. What access they have to the legal system is also sort of mysterious. For example, Prigozhinism is one thing. Before he blew up in his luxury plane, he started a massive legal case of what was it, defamation or something. He paid off London's most expensive law firms to pursue a defamation case against him, against a journalist that published a story that was less than flattering for rather understandable reasons. But see, the punishment is the procedure. So if you have millions of dollars and you can pay lawyers to make someone's life miserable, well, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose the case in 10 years. It's the procedure that counts, and that's what they use too. But politicians, their hands are tied. They don't know what's what. They can't see that for what it is. They don't know. That was a clear case, but these other cases, it's not so clear. Oh, really? It's not so clear? I'd say it's pretty clear. It's crystal clear to people not wearing Duca glasses. But see, you need to have sort of Duca vision to look through that Duca. And I was thinking, yeah, that is a form of engagement. You're engaging with Duca to see that Duca, and then so that Duca can add up. It's like plaque on your teeth. So how do you brush that off? Well, you're going to need some pretty good individual practice, aren't you? And you're going to need a lot of disengagement with subverted social conventions and norms, and peoples whose brains and minds and bodies have been smashed to clumps. And it's one of probably the most disgusting times, I think, that human history has ever recorded, at least in modern times. But of course, that's also something people would dispute. Oh, it's not happening. But what gets you past that? Well, it's individual practice again. You can disengage with it. So sometimes I use it. I'll bring in Dukkha to show how wrong it is to bring it into your life, and then I show how you can disengage from it. But at the same time, extract some insight from it, which is not only not engaging with it, but seeing how it is trying to engage with you, even if you're trying to get into, for example, a monastery. You would think you would put this stuff all behind you, but no, they're there too. So I would say, yeah, Western, especially Western religious institutions that had anything to do with the left. Like sometimes they'll say that they're proud of being 68ers or something, or leftists when they were young. They usually don't ever come out of that. So right there, any institution, I would also say any institution that has more than 1% non-Westerners, or any non-Westerners in leadership positions, or women in leadership positions, or I don't know what to call them, eunuchs, or Men in appearance only, weakling men. They're binos. They're not Buddhists. Just like chinos, Christians in name only. You could say they're there too. And this is unfortunate, like I said, because Buddhism was considered countercultural by these maniacs in the 60s, and so they got into it early and they've stayed. So how do you eject them out of institutions that they were very prevalent in the beginning, at least when Buddhism became more popular in the West, or was popularized in the West? You would have to set up new ones and just pull the plug on the old ones and see them for the smoke show that they are. And these rules could also be applied to other countries. So if there's, for example, let's say in Cambodia, if all of a sudden there's, let's say all the top spots in the Cambodian institution are run by Angolans or women, then you could consider that institution defunct. So the same method can be applied to the West, even if it's not as obvious as Angolans, even if they take all Tibetans and prop them up in a Western institution in the West under the auspices that this is how the West does things. That is, of course, wrong. That is not true. That is their inverted version of sociology at play. So you're looking at binos. Now, this a bino institution that might use real Buddhists from other places to commit these frauds, but institutionally, it's a defunct institution. And that's the way you should see it until it changes or goes away, or other institutions are created that are indeed Western and not just in name only. Now, some might say, oh, this sounds very dire. What should we do? What should we do? Well, look, I get it. A lot of the abbots, they started off as people that just wanted to deal with religion, and they got into politics because they're living in despotic countries with a despotic class that is using this method and technique. And all of that is very, 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 very disappointing. It's a very worldly experience. It's very disillusioning. You work your entire life, what you think, for something good, and then you get a knock on the door. Oh, hello, Mr. Despotic class. Oh, but you're really cool. You're like from some dumb university, and maybe your family's in the oil business. And oh, let's have a sit down about tax exempt status and other things. And oh, just don't be intolerant, right? And we'll take care of the rest, kind of thing. Is it happening? Is it not happening? What is it mostly good? Is this inevitable? Is this just the way you have to do things? So here is my recommendation to all abbots that have failed on this level, is that you should dissolve whatever organization, monastery, whatever official entity that's there. And maybe you can come up with some skillful explanation for that, but it should be worded in such a way that does let people know the real reason. And then what you can do is revert to a dispersed individual practice without a centralized point. and come up with a few different methods of staying in touch with real practitioners and not the binos or people leveraged by binos. And let the binos do the bino thing. But let that also be known, perhaps amongst other people, what actually is going on and what they're actually about. And it's possible that they will become more and more ridiculous looking, like they do in a lot of Christian churches at this time, to the point where even if you went in as an unknowing person, you would walk out within the first 3 minutes because it's sacrilegious. You get that sense immediately. You might as well walk into, I don't know, some type of dive bar in a bad part of town. You get the same type of vibe. Now, they might be paid by their donors to go through the motions, but I don't think they'll be convincing any religious people. Now, of course, it's very unfortunate for the innocent victims that aren't able to tell one from the other. It's very bad karma for the people that do that. But that's just the world we live in, isn't it, at this time? But that, of course, is just one strategy. I'm sure there are 1,000 different ones that might even be more effective. But that's the type of thinking you need to do in times of hybrid war with this type of attack. And essentially it is carried out by a despotic class. You could think of them as first estaters, but you don't want to be the second estate to a first estate like that now, do you? So I understand how it can creep up on good people, how they can end up compromising their principles, and that's how they've been operating for a long time now. And it's terrible, it's awful, it's a war crime, and maybe one day the tide will be turned and they will all get charged with that. Which, let me tell you, is not a sentence that anyone really wants to get for understandable reasons. But of course, just passing out that judgment isn't something that unqualified people should be doing either. But voting with your feet, that is always an option. Your feet, as long as they're working, they're working. And there's other methods too. But yeah, despots don't like religion. They don't like religious people. And they like to keep an eye on them, tabs on them, and have people that kowtow to them in positions of authority. And that really shouldn't be something that surprises anyone. Now, new organizations that start up under good leadership, maybe it will last as long as the teacher is good. And then after that, it depends on the succession. And if there's these cronies in the group that position themselves like they like to do, then it's pretty much done. It's just like companies that get sold to investors. They take the brand and what do they do with it? That's right. The crappy parts go in and the box and the name stays the same. Is it the same thing? Well, they say so. They do. They have a marketing department and legal departments. You say that it's not the same thing, that you'll get a Prigozhinist legal case against you. Defamation! Defamation! Like that, Boeing engineer? He's lying, Judge. She's lying. He's worked 25 years in the quality control department. He doesn't know what he's talking about, Judge. Look at this shiny suit and this watch. Flash, flash, flash. Didn't you go to the same university as me? Throw him in jail, Judge. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing. But who knows how long? I hope next year, maybe in 2 weeks, they'll all be thrown in jail. It could happen. It's not like they have really any legitimacy. Any vote or government or administration that put those people in is defunct. They could all get thrown in jail too. That's why these people are worried. They're very worried about things like free speech. They'll ban whole platforms like Allvex or Twitter in Brazil. The whole country, no. There was hateful things said about all those car wash scandals. Or was it fire truck scandals? Who knows? Can't have that. Get back to reading those newspapers. Magazines. Magazines with like cartoonishly bad editorial practices and just nothing but fake news and subversives and leftoid chumps. Stuff you wouldn't. I mean, really, the supermarket flyers are more informative than they are, and less offensive to cultured people. But they got a union. They got a union on culture. They got an HR department. Make sure it sorts out any smart alecks. Just got the drudges working for them, 30-year mortgages and nesters behind the. Me, it's just the nesters, right? Independent nesters unite. Working for that job. Ain't no man gonna tell them what to do. But they don't like getting fired, do they, for things like incompetence or gross negligence or how about lying? They don't like getting fired for that. What are they going to do then? Going to have to collect old tuna cans for the metallic value. They don't want to do that. But they will put together a paper, though, all those images and those words. Probably there's a bunch of spelling mistakes, too. But they're important. They went to university. They're professor doctors. That's right. These days, they put them in those positions, too. Very proud of themselves. Get little groups together and clap themselves, put themselves on film. But yeah, that's what we're dealing with. And Easterners, look, the billion Chinese, they have the system. They're accomplished ones, or people that are part of the despotic class. That's just a small fraction. Just like in the Russian system. So don't let them snow you. Like people that are allowed outside their system, they're part of the despotic class. And they know where they can go if they don't do things the right way. And they're very big on conforming to those things. But they will look down on Westerners that don't know what they're dealing with. So don't be one of those. And yeah, Westerners have an equivalent despotic class like that. So anybody involved in financial industry, banking, I would say these universities that create this radical class trash. That's the class you're looking at. How long will they be around? I'd say maybe 3 months. We could just say they're fired, right? They got a 3-month notice. Let's give them a 3-week notice right now. Like, look at your watch. Look at this day. Give them 3 weeks notice. Now, if they stay in the positions, then they're gonna have to be, I guess, ushered out of the places they're in. So, but I'd say somebody fired them a long time ago. But we're gonna give them 3 weeks. So look at your watch. After that, they're illicit. So I'd say 2025, they all need to go, but we'll see. We'll see how history does it. I think 1925 they had similar problems in similar different places, and it took a little bit longer than that to get rid of them, but they didn't get rid of all of them, did they? And not in all places. So I don't know. That's why I think individual practice is something that is going to be valuable for a long time. But that's for everyone to sort out for themselves. We all know this plane of existence is a garbage disposal unit, and sometimes success isn't success, and sometimes failure isn't failure. And don't conflate the two. Don't want what you think other people have, because if that's how they got it, it's not going to go good for them in the end, is it? So, peace of mind. Clean out any resentments one might have anywhere. If there's a little cobweb of resentment in a corner of your mind somewhere, take out the duster and feather dust that out of your mind. Jump into a big bath of fragrant waters. Cleanse yourself over and over and over again. If that's what it takes, keep doing that. That's what people who have self-concern, have valid concern for themselves do. People who can heal themselves, people who can cleanse and purify themselves, people who can distance and separate themselves, people who can reclaim their agency, people who are not slaves, people who are liberated, people who are free despite whatever it is they might be dealing with in this realm of delusion. Once you shift towards internal practice, getting up at 3 in the morning, for example, you can see that as auspicious. You can also see it as part of an alchemical process. The 3 a.m. practice starts with Negredo, but you don't have to give it a negative connotation. You can just see it as the beginning of a process, the beginning of a new life, the beginning of a new day of refinement, because you've also changed your time scale. Will it be a 6-hour phase, a 6-day phase, a 60-day phase, a 600-day phase, a 6,000 or 60,000 day or live phase? It doesn't really matter. The method is all that matters, the here and the now. And when you go directly, you transition directly into practice at 3 a.m., which is to say you adopt or embrace the moment for practice. That is very auspicious. That is very, 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 very good, solid practice. And everyone else can be asleep. No need to disturb anyone. No need to prove anything to anyone. It is you. Just like a general preparing to face an army, it is you alone that matters. And there are all your things. be sure to have your things organized before you go to sleep so that you can anticipate a potential 3 a.m. practice. Now, some practice it every day religiously. You see, you see how we even use that term religiously. Yes, that is the true term. But I give people the option of flexible practice. If you happen to sleep in or miss that day, then it was not meant to be. But where you are is your point of contact, so that is where you begin. You find yourself again and again and again and again. The horse threw you off here. This is where you begin practice. But 3 a.m. practice, which happens without any force, which just happens, is very good. And all of your things are there. You set up the evening before and everything is there. You can find what you are looking for in the dark. You have your magic carpet in the place for it. You have a cushion. You have whatever other instruments at hand, at the ready, just like a general has his armor and weapons, his helmet, and all of it is very well maintained, in very good working order. All repairs have been made the previous day, and all of it fits snugly, comfortably, and is ready for use at the point of contact, so that all of that need not be attended to at 3 a.m. It's ready for use. It is put to use. It is in use at 3 a.m. And that means also that that day is a day where you will be looking into the Nigredo phase, and the Nigredo phase is the deepest phase. It is the darkest phase. But you might be surprised that with such preparations, it is not as horrifying or terrible because you are prepared. If the general metaphor is a little too extreme, then think of yourself as a technician or some repair person, an engineer. Your flashlight is there, your wrenches are here, your gloves are there, your helmet is there. And so, what if there is a broken pipe? Then you can see it clearly, it's not in the dark. You have your light, you can see it, you can repair it, you have your tools. There is nothing to be afraid of when you are prepared. And just having one of those things is better than nothing. And of course, having the knowledge, having gone through pipe repairs in the dark, gives you a surety that this is no different than the other pipe repairs. There are variables, there is a certain amount of danger, there is a certain amount of messiness, there is a certain amount of coldness. But there is also a certain amount of skill and a certain amount of perspective. And those things do matter. They make all of the difference. And even if there is not a broken pipe, or perhaps it's just a small repair, it's all about preparation. It's all about training. It's all about accepting this dimension and the spiritual dimension and working with it, not against it. So you have a lot of dissatisfaction in this Negredo phase. Well, that's a lot to work with, isn't it? It's a lot to train with. So this burns you like that, and this hits you like that, and this crushes you like that, and this whips you like this, and this makes you afraid like that. This makes you doubt like this, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. And that is how you gain insight, friends. Without it, what do you have? You have equanimity. But equanimity is not always an end state. It's great when it's there, but it can only be attained when the other things are put to rest. And I am not for full confrontation with them. I like to dodge them. I like to trick them. I like to drop them instantly as they arise. I like to pop this bubble and that bubble of delusion as it arises instantly. But some of them are sticky. Some of them seem to be more real than they are, do they not? And those are the ones that you wrestle with. And those are the ones you can attempt to throw an elbow and it will be caught. And then you throw across left and it's dodged. And then you come with the knee and the other knee and then the combinations. And then you start taking hits too. And those hits hurt. There's no other way of learning. But then look, it hit you with enough force to dent your breastplate. But your breastplate, had it not been there, would have crushed you. But it crushed its strike instead. And before, you would have thought that would be the end of the matter, which would end in your suffering. But that's when you reach and draw your sword and slice the thing into. What news? Devilish things can happen in a devilish dimension. Is that news? none of your disappointments, dissatisfactions, delusions, hopes are any different than any other living creatures in this dimension. But skill is a magical sword. And with it, all enemies of the mind can be defeated. So you wanted this and that and this and that and that and this. Do not see the that and this. See only the one and defeat it. Do you have fortunate circumstances to practice? Then give gratitude and thanks to all of those things and all of the people that allow you to practice under fortunate conditions, happy conditions, generous conditions. But if not, then thank the austerities for their hardness, for their difficulties, for their harshness, because surely that is where the greatest of progress is made. For finally, what is 6 years in the jungle, if that is what frees you from millions of lives of circuitous habit? For if it is pain that leads us to realization, then is pain bad? If it is the sharpening stone that sharpens the blade, is the stone bad? Because is it not only the sharp sword that cuts? And do not forget that even a few angles of degree are essential for cutting. If the edge of the blade is not perfectly angular and the blade is not brought at the right angle, in the right way, with the right force, then what happens? Is that the difference between whacking and cutting? And yet, none of us ever learned these principles without training, without repetition, without insight, without fluid, dynamic, repetitive, flowing motion and application of force. Is it a fever that finally brought you to reflect, finally brought you to stillness, then that fever is not an enemy. That fever is your friend. As far as history and the external world goes, just think again how terrible 1929 was for a lot of people. Then that led to 1930. That wasn't a good year. 1931 wasn't. 32, all the way. You could go through the years and just say, well, this wasn't a good year. That wasn't a good year. That could have been a bad or even worse year. But then think of all the people that were living like pinballs during that time, that pinballed their way through and didn't come out much worse for wear. However, they came out worse for wear at some point because they died. They're dead, most likely. This place chews people up and spits them out, so don't take it too hard. Whenever you find yourself engaging in that type of thinking, you're engaging in idealistic thinking. Well, it should have been perfect, but isn't. And then there's that comparison. That is a suffering matrix. And it could be for any reason. What about the guy who's thinking right now, well, if I only didn't break my leg on that ski slope, I wouldn't be in all this pain. And he might be right, but he could be thinking that way. That's not helpful for him. So however you're thinking, however your perfect situation, your perfect outcome was, that's what's going to bother you if you let it. So don't distract yourself if you have to. But don't distract yourself in that you just say, well, I'm not going to think about this. See yourself thinking about that. And then drop that way of thinking. Don't move on to a different way of thinking. You have to let it go. You have to do it consciously. You have to tear it apart. And I think in a lot of ways we were also conditioned to think in historical context, because we also had this weird idea of historical progress, which we know isn't true. It's not true. Maybe there's some technological changes. That's it. On a psychological standpoint, there is no progress. Except in terms of individual progress or individual skill or the lack thereof. And taking apart these suffering matrices, our own personal ones, is really important, because otherwise they will tear you up, they will grind you down, they will suffocate and destroy you. Think of them as boa constrictors that just keep getting bigger and tighter around your neck if you let them. If you keep coming back to the realization that there's a lot of wrong views, and historical views are wrong, social views are wrong, social constructs are wrong, social narratives are wrong. Oh, but the group thinks this way now, but what will the group think tomorrow or in a month? Does it matter what the group thinks? I mean, it sort of does. If they think you're a bad person for a while, that sort of stinks, doesn't it? But what if they're wrong? Do you have to let that wreck your day? Where are the people of the group that think that way? What, or are they just in your mind? This person didn't like me. It's amazing that people like anyone in this realm, even for a brief period of time, or even if they are deluded into thinking they like someone for a time. It's amazing. And it happens with the worst type of people and the best type of people. Best type of people don't like them all the time. It's impossible. How about people that don't like the best type of people because they're the best type of people? Man, this person's so great. What am I compared to this person? Just look at entire groups of people doing that. Like it typifies their entire history throughout time. We're supposed to be the best group. How can they be better than us? Oh, this is really terrible. What's wrong with us? It's absurd, but it's what people have been doing. So that's how group consciousness can capture people. How about if they never got that story in the first place? Like, look, it's just you. It's just you the day you were born, and it's just you the day you die, and everything in between is either gravy or the thing that looks like gravy but doesn't taste like gravy, or a mixture of the two. And it's up to you to sort the two out. Also, the way you see things, the way you see yourself in this universe. If you look at it like a gym, yeah, there are a lot of hard things out there to lift and to bend and to pull. But if you do it consistently and in a routine, with a routine that doesn't injure yourself, or even if you have injuries, you work around those injuries, you're going to be doing the best you can do for yourself under the circumstances. And that's all you can do. For God's sake, accept that. And make the best of it. Come on. That guy with the gimpy leg, if he can crack a couple of jokes at the right time, is that not gold? Is that not platinum? Is that not real? No, it's not real. It doesn't matter. That's what people say. But it does matter. It does matter. The person that can make you laugh, that person matters. Even, especially when they think they don't matter. Because usually those are the people that make you laugh. You don't laugh at the boss. I mean, you can, but you better watch out. But that old crooked, rickety dude that was never the sharpest butter knife in the drawer and had a hard life, and when he slips out on a banana peel in front, you just can't stop laughing. I mean, it's not right, but it's a gift. Look at that gift he gave to you. Not having 2 pennies put together for himself. Now, if he can do that to himself, if he can laugh at himself, that's the richest man in the world. That's a man who has overcome everything in that moment, has overcome the adversity of the universe. And we're often that man. We're just in disguise. We go through different disguises. Sometimes we think we're the boss. But are we really that? Does this universe let anybody be the boss? Do you show me the biggest boss you know? Let me talk to them for 5 minutes. They're not the boss. They just think they're the boss for a while. What happens when they're not the boss? Can they still live right? Can they still get themselves up after they've fallen down all those steps? Brush themselves off and maybe laugh about it too? If they can do that, then there's something bigger than a boss, aren't they? Much bigger than a boss. But look, this dimension, it's not perfect. I keep coming back to that. And just watch yourself. Watch those frames. Especially if you do a 3 in the morning practice, then you go back to sleep. Then you wake up. And then you slowly begin to see that frame forming around you again. Like this dimension, it's not perfect. It's just going to be something. It's just that vague frame, like here I'm back in this box. Back in this box. Don't let that happen. Don't let those screws get tightened on that frame. Pull it apart. Push back against it. Kick it. It's flimsy. It'll break apart. Change your point of view again and again and again. Find something small. Maybe there's a plant somewhere that needs watering in your vicinity. Get a container, put some water in it, and do that plant a service. It wasn't expecting that. It looks up at the sky. What? Was it supposed to rain today? Where's this water coming? Oh, it's this goofy guy again. Look at him. It's like some type of elephant. It's one of them mammals, 2 feet. And it's not trampling. It's, look at this. It's amazing. Small gestures like that. Curating the beautiful. Curating the small things within your control. That's what life's about. We were not meant to take on these big problems. We're not meant to solve big problems. We're not meant to change this dimension fundamentally. Now we can do things where we can, but it has to be outcome independent, doesn't it? It has to be. If you go in as an engineer and say, this is outcome independent, into this life, you're going in with the wrong mentality. Now, I understand it. Materialism, look, the bridge that you build, it's supposed to be spec to certain things, right? I get that part. But that engineer that builds that bridge to those specs, it can't know that 3 days later there's going to be an airstrike and everything's going to get blown up. He didn't know that part. See, that's one of the variables in the universal equation. Now, he might have just been on a scaffold and he got blown 40 feet into the air, did a couple of somersaults, stretched out his hand like a bird, and flew straight into a tree, and didn't have a scratch. That's one of those variables too. But essentially, it's back to square zero, or in that case, it's back to -0. Because now you've got some more demolition work to do, or you've got to change location. Can't be building no bridge there. And then you got to put in a second order. So, hey, Jimmy, is that you? Why are you ordering the same thing again? Look, don't ask. We're starting over, and don't deliver it to the old spot. That's it. It's just like that. Somebody gets us an order for twice as much. Wasn't even expecting it. And then you can make revisions. You could say, and remember how you messed up on the rebar? Don't do that again. It was just training. That's it. It was an exercise. No harm done. Were you personally invested in the outcome? Why? So this place is like a sandbox, right? Things come, things go, things form. Look at this person standing in front of me right now with this screwy expression on their face, their hat on crooked and dusty. It's like they took off the goggles, they're covered in dust. Who is this guy? He didn't expect that to happen to him this morning. There he is. How's he dealing with that? Is he keeping fluid? Is he keeping things moving, or is he stuck on something that isn't there anymore? Because that's not the type of person that's needed in this dimension. But he might take some time. Look, being that in the moment, being that in flow, being that flexible, it's super normal, okay? And if you have it, you're like some type of magical ball bearing It doesn't matter what vector the forces come. It hits you this way, you roll that way. It hits you this way, you roll that way. A lot of people are just doing that all day long. But if you redirect that force smoothly, there it goes. It goes someplace else. It doesn't hit you. As hard as it tries, a hammer comes from here. It tries to hit it, but that bearing is small, and it doesn't hit it dead on. Right? It deflects it every time. So again, wham, 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 wham. This thought, that thought, wham, 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 wham. It never hits it straight against something on a solid surface, and so it's always deflecting it. And look, that could happen for a time. Those hammer blows are coming. But it's not going to be like that always. So when you're in the moment where that's happening, you can think to yourself, wow, look at this. This is really challenging. This is challenging. Never seen so many hammer blows fall like this, fast and furious like this. Yesterday she loved me, today she can't see it for dust. You did this, you thought you were going to get a medal, you end up in the brig instead. How's this? I mean, the blows just... Then all of a sudden, 2 days later, you're set free, and you're exonerated. How did you didn't know that was going to happen 36 hours into the incident, but if you beat yourself up about it, there was nobody there doing that but you. Now, if you didn't do that, just laughing the whole time, the thing just gets funnier and funnier. And in fact, you didn't think it was a big deal anyway. Now look at all these medals. It's like I said, the medals that you aren't given are the biggest medals, aren't they? Who's going to come afterwards and say, hey, come over here. Stand at attention. Here you go. It's the biggest medal we got. When does that happen? See, they don't even make movies that way anymore. You got to go back. Got to go in the dusty stacks to find one where they actually show things like that. But if you're looking to be annoyed, whoa, that line is long. You're gonna be annoyed every which way but loose. That's the thing. Looking for annoyance. Look at yourself looking for annoyance when you are annoyed, and stop doing that. That is the counterintuitive, supernormal skill. And why is it a skill? Because it's intentional. And it's intentional with awareness. So you're very aware of what you're doing. And you're very intentional. And you're very meticulous about it. And you're very determined. But it takes time. Some of these puzzles, it takes time. So remove the time element. The more puzzles you solve, especially if there's recurring patterns, the quicker you will be able to solve them. But not every time. Sometimes it's the same damn puzzle. You solved it yesterday, you thought so. It comes back and it takes you a week. Don't put a time scale on it. Just say, okay, this is puzzling. This is puzzling. I'm puzzling. I'm puzzling about a puzzle here. But I'm going to get it eventually. And it might just be that I fade it. Like I hit a button. There's some strange button somewhere. And it just fades into non-existent. Like that last puzzle piece, it was deliberately messed up. But when you hit that button, it fades out of existence. That was the solution. Because anything that gets it out of your existence is the solution. And then it's gone. At least for that day, for that mind moment. Then maybe another puzzle will show up. Oh, here's another puzzle. Puzzling about puzzles. Where's that fade button again? Oh, there it is. Poop. That's the trick. You got one of those. The puzzle could be as puzzling as can be. You fade it out of existence. But yeah, watch those frames, those historical frames. This should be better than it is. Type of thinking. Why is it that all of these things aren't working right? That type of frame. Oh, kick that frame. Find a joint. One of those joints is creaky. You can hear it creak. You can push it. It creaks. That's the joint. Just kick it as hard as you can. Doesn't do anything. Kick it again. Bam, 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 and then boom, it goes. They call them reality constructs. But it's not reality, it's you constructing it. That's the point. Hit it at the flimsiest point. And don't do it with something that hurts. I got big boots on. When I kick something and that thing isn't solid, that thing is flying apart. But sometimes it takes 3 kicks. 1, boom. 2, boom. You see it wobbling, and then that third kick, bam, flies apart. That's what we're talking about. That's freedom. That's liberation. That's intentional liberation. Because the other people would just be like, oh, this little box that go around like this, timid, touching the frame with their pinky. Oh, this is a box. I'm in a box. Look at this. It go around. No, you got to get them big hunk boots on. And when you kick it, that thing needs to feel it. And 3 kicks with them boots, there ain't hardly anything in this universe that can withstand that. But if it takes 4 kicks, I'll do that too. 5, no problem. I got it. I'll do it 10 times. How many fingers you got? I got 10 fingers still, so I can kick 10 times. Whatever it takes. And don't get psyched out about it. Oftentimes it looks like this thing can't fall apart like that. Well, then move the position. That might be the strong point. Somewhere down the line, there's going to be something flimsy. Or, like I said, at some point a fade button shows up, but you have to wait for that. And when it comes, hit it. Tap, 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 tap. Let it fade away. Because times have always been challenging. Think of the people in the Stone Age. People dying of diseases. They got their foot crushed in a rock. All of a sudden gangrene sets in. There's horrible ways to go. There's people out experiencing truly horrible things right now. Believe it. So what are you worried about again? Didn't get a job, you put in a suggestion, and they didn't approve your multi-trillion-dollar contract. I mean, what? Get over yourself. What if you got it? You'd have all different types of problems. Then people start going, looking to you for you. Hey, where is that guy? I gotta ask him some questions. He better have some answers. You want to be that guy? That guy roasting chestnuts down there by the beach, he's got a better job than that guy does. Ain't nobody ask him any questions other than how much do those chestnuts cost? That's it. He's got that answer ready for him. As far as the other things, see, that guy could be retired. You don't know how he's living. He might not be living in a wine barrel like Diogenes did. That just might be his shtick. Keeping things real. He might like chestnuts. That's his thing. He's working on the perfect roast. That's what he's devoting himself to. You don't know. But being a big shot, that's not what it's really what it appears to be all the time. Being a big shot, it means being aggravated more than many other people most of the time. Do you want to be a big shot? Why do you want that? See, the want. Where is this want coming from? Is it coming from a good place, a wise place? Is it coming from a universal place, or is it coming from a delusional place? Yes or no? Do ask yourself questions. Do talk back to yourself. Do question yourself. Question what you want. Question what you feel bad about. Do it every time. Like, why is this bothering you? Be that person to yourself. Don't wait till somebody else has to tell you that. Because then you know it's gone too far. If I have to tell you that, why is this bothering you? After you went through your long story, you messed up. You let yourself down. So don't do that. Be the first person to ask yourself, why? Wait a second. Wait. Catch yourself. Be that first person to catch yourself. Like a very good friend to yourself, as you should be. Why aren't you your own best friend? Be your best friend. Have valid concern for yourself. You're beat up about something, talk back to yourself. Hey, wait a second. Why is this bothering you? If they were here right now, the whole situation would be different. But they are not here, so you got options. You can do precisely what you want to do. And you don't have to make any explanations. You don't have to justify, argue, deny, or evade. You don't. You're not jaded. They're not there. So you've got 360 degrees of activity. Nothing is holding you back. Just the things you think are holding you back, but you can get rid of those. See, you just did. You did it once, you can do it again. You can get in the habit of doing it, and then how is it that you're beat up about something that isn't precisely the way you wanted it to be? Because of reasons. Reasons outside of your control. Most likely. But that's what this realm is about. That's this dimension. That's what it's about. That's what is supposed to transform you for the future dimensions to come. If you get that skill here, this place was worth it. It's a refinement school. You get that refinement. It's like good manners or politeness. You ever meet someone who was just perfectly polite all the time and thought to yourself, what a masterful person this is? And especially when they do it in such a low-key way that you never even notice it. It doesn't even appear like they're being polite, but you think to yourself, this person has always been perfectly polite. Have you ever met someone like that? I have. I think of them from time to time and think, how could I be that polite to other people? How can I integrate that? Because politeness is a form of mastery. But it's a skill. A lot of people, okay, he was polite. A lot of people don't even notice it. It's like an invisible skill. And the person who's polite usually doesn't notice it themselves either, because they are that person. They're polite. They've transformed into it. They've embraced it. But I'm willing to bet they didn't start off that way, but they went on that journey, and now they've reached that level of skill, and now they're polite. That's good for them. That's good for people around them. And that's good for them where they're going. It's a good attitude to have. They're transformed. They're different people. And so you need to think about that. Think of that in terms of things bothering you. If nothing bothers you, truly on an essential level, then you're not going to the hell realms. You can already taste the one of the environmentals of the heavenly realms. You're just not bothered by bothersome things. That's a level of mastery. And if it's automatic, if it's part of you, it's just how you are, well then dying is not death. I lit a cigarette, took a couple of drags. Now don't inhale on the lungs, just to taste the tobacco. It reminds me of some good friends. But I put it out, having thought this thought. I was thinking, the comedy routines, it is called improv of comedy, right? Is that you can go into the depths of the most depressing matters that you may become aware of at any time, but then you overcome it. You see, it's just an abstraction. Everybody can read a newspaper, right? Everyone has the right to beat themselves up about things. Some of the things I talk about are some of the most disturbing things on the planet, I think, but that's what I use as an abstraction to break them down as training so that I can do it for myself, right? My issues, the things bothering me, my karma, my fate. I can apply those skills to me. And then finally I can let the stuff that doesn't really, there's no reason why I should even bother myself about these things. There's no good reason. It's not me, it's not mine. It's not my damn problem, is it? For example, am I running a religious institution, yes or no? No? Well, then these things are not my problem, are they? But the problems that I've described are so disturbing. I mean, how it's like getting into how surgeries go wrong in operating rooms around the world every day, and talking about that's the equivalency of the things I talk about sometimes. But see, that's the method to get to the comedy, to get to the release, to get to the philosophy, to get to the liberation, the enlightenment, to the superhuman laughter. But that journey, it's tortuous. Sometimes I think to myself, why did I even pick this up? Why am I even looking for these things? Can I just leave it? Can I just leave that all behind and have the laughter instead? And I do think that is possible, but it depends on it depends on how you get there, right? Some people, when they're climbing, they go freestyle. They have no ropes, they have no other equipment, and then there's people, you see them, they look like turtles. They're weighed down with all this rope, all this equipment, and they do the same rock face, but they do it very methodically. And they would say they do it more safely than the freestylists. And there's something to be said for that. If their technique truly is safe, if they are setting their anchors and their bolts properly, and they're running their ropes properly, and they're not overloading it or combining it with unskillful people or unskillful weather conditions and so on and so forth, then maybe it is more skillful. But they also might be delusional in that regards, and they won't really know unless it's tested. And if it tests and their bolt pops, then the last thought that will go through their mind is that they were deluded about their technique. So I don't advise doing it. but it is one method that I've adopted, or how should I say, transformed, because I set off that way. But it's not necessarily the way to go. In fact, if you can avoid looking for things to get bummed out about, I think that would be the most skillful of all. And yet, some people who go looking, they find the things that stick with them, and then they have to deal with those things the best they know how. And transforming tragedy into comedy is not always successful, despite whatever skills one might think one has at a moment or another. But I think finally, if anything I say is useful to someone, then let it be useful to them, including this warning about tragedy and comedy. But finally, I think my comedy routine with some editing, if I edit out all the things that led to the inspiration of comedy, it would just be a straight comedy routine. And some people would say, okay, let me hear that part. Let me not hear the whole part. Let me just hear the one-dimensional part. And then they would hear it, and it would be, oh, this is tradition. This is comedy. This is funny. Oh, but that part was a little too edgy. You should probably delete that part. And then I'd listen to them and say, hey, you know what? You're probably right. I'm going to get rid of that too. And then my, 4, 5, 6, 7 hour at a time sessions might get condensed down to 45 minutes of uproarious comedy. Just like the gold that remains over after you throw a dump truck or two into the top of some type of refining mechanism. You know that the gold is in the ore, but that ore, it needs to be sifted and sorted and washed out for it to be left with the rest. And that's usually what people want. They just want that. They don't want the process. They don't want the ore. They don't want the work. They just want the shiny bits. And I understand that. People, they want the comedy gold. They want the laughs. They don't want the work. But this process, it shows you sort of both sides. It shows you the entirety of the process. It shows you different techniques. There's the front loader. There's the pick. Right? There's the good old-fashioned shovel. There's the donkey. There's the slag. All the parts of comedy. So it's sort of an improv to return back to the entirety of it, to give people some perspective on where all these laughs come from.